And Gita Dhyanam, the English translation, if you want to follow along, it's that loose sheet in the Kirtan book. There should be a loose sheet in there. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters from within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, Upanishad, come close. Hari, Upanishad. Okay. So we just began the 12th chapter, Yoga of Devotion. Jai! The best chapter. Because in the 12th chapter, Lord Krishna is done talking about who I am, and now saying how to reach me, how to come into union with me. And Arjuna had asked the question, and we're just beginning. Arjuna had asked the question, what is the best way to worship you? What is the best way to come to you? And Lord Krishna is beginning to answer. And we've had this beautiful, we're reading some from Swami Chinmayananda's translation, commentary, which is translated, the translation book is simply called The Holy Gita. So we'd picked this up. I'd been with Swami Ramaswarup, who left the body this past summer, Mahasamadhi this past summer, last day of July. And so he's not a scholar, neither is Swami here. His relationship with the Bhagavad Gita, his guru, Swami Satchidananda, who became the leader, titular head of Divine Life Society when Swami Shivananda left the body, but whom Swami Shivananda had spoken about and said, he was my guru in past birth. Swami Satchidananda, where Swami Shivananda stayed in the center and never really left Rishikesh after his All India tour in 49, 50. So Swami Shivananda stayed there for 13 years, really rarely ever left the ashram grounds. And Swami Satchidananda had been sent to travel the world and take the teaching of yoga around the world. And so he did. In fact, there's this beautiful photo that I'll see in the mind's eye sometimes of Swami Satchidananda and the Pope of that time meeting. So he met all the religious heads around the world, and he never proselytized. He was so simple, so humble, but still he was driven, this artesian well, Hari, he was driven to take the teaching of yoga everywhere. And so, and that was the time that Swami Shivananda had sent his disciples around the world as well in the same way. Swami Ramaswarup was, for many years, the primary assistant of Swami Chidananda. And so he would pack for him and travel with him and then teach for him in later years, because Swami Chidananda started sending Swami Ramaswarup around. So he went throughout Asia and came to the West, came to the US, etc. Swami Chidananda embodies the Bhagavad Gita. So there's this discussion, sometimes we'll pick it up in the Upanishads, about for the one who knows, not thinks that they know, we say we know, which is a sign of we don't know. The one who knows doesn't walk around saying, I know. So he embodies. Why? Because the teaching is on the inside. We study it outside in order to connect with it inside. It's inside. And so some of Swami Chidananda's disciples, I hadn't met him in the flesh, but I met him through his disciples, including Swami Ramaswarup. And they would say about Swami Chidananda, he is the Bhagavad Gita. He is the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, every breath, every thought, every word is the Bhagavad Gita. So in this way. So an embodiment of it, not just a reader of it or a teacher of it, an embodiment of it, living it. But also, Swami Ramaswarup became really enamored with the study of the Bhagavad Gita. And so while we were together that year or so that I was able to be at his feet and Swami Premananda, Swami Premananda has these, and still today, 3-hour plus classes every day on Yoga Vasishta, and then, which are profound and very simple also. He calls it joke Vasishta. Swami Premananda is always laughing. And you see the image here of Swami Ramaswarup. That's quite common as well. And so Swami Chidananda, Swami Ramaswarup, every morning we would get together and we would open up Bhagavad Gita. And one day, and read and then practice it during the day, And then one day, I'd gone down to the little market, and the local market is about 1/4 the size of this room, 1/3, something like that, of the satsang hall. So very packed in, and they have a little bit of everything. And Kamandu is the owner of the shop, and so he'd taken a liking to me, and of course I him. One day I went in to pick up a little bit of sugar, and he handed this. Somehow he'd come across this Indian in India. He'd come across this English translation, this book, this particular book, and that was my introduction to this translation. And this is a 1,100-page commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So it's quite, and Swami Chinmayananda is a Vedantin. He was known in his time as the leading teacher of Vedanta, of Advaita Vedanta in the world. And his disciples, Swami Dayananda included, and then we know some of Swami Dayananda's disciples. We meet them from time to time. They're in our circle. In fact, Swami Chinmayananda sees the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita as the teaching of yoga psychology, the mind, how the mind works, the entire function of the mind and the control of the mind in order to release one from the bondage of the mind, right? That cage. And so this is the perspective from which he comes. So interestingly, he addresses devotion from a psychological perspective. So the little story, that finished little story is I brought that copy back to to Swami Ramaswarup. And we looked at it and we both marveled at it. And he knew Swami Chinmayananda, but he hadn't been himself familiar with this particular edition. Of course, he knew Swami Chinmayananda. He had met Swami Chinmayananda many times. Swami Chinmayananda had been a disciple of Swami Shivananda, so a guru bhai of Swami Satchidananda, who is Swami Ramaswarup's master, Swami Ramaswarup's guru. So they had met, but by then Swami Chinmayananda had gone off and formed Chinmaya Mission, which is worldwide. Had formed it, Mother or Krishna does everything here, but had become the steward of this great Chinmaya mission. But he still visited, and so they were able to meet a number of times. But he hadn't read this, and so we started to read, and this is quite something. As we've been studying, we started 8 months ago now, almost 9 months ago, morning review of the Bhagavad Gita. And as we've been doing it, generally we've been using Living Gita, which is the commentary by Swami Satchidananda, which is really beautiful, really good for the Western psyche. We're so jaded. Okay. We continue. So Lord Krishna had begun to answer the question, and what did he say? He said first, the question was, which is better, to worship you, this is Arjuna, to worship you in form, like in front of me, like you, or to worship you as the absolute unmanifest? And Krishna answers, and first he answers this way. He says, he's really speaking of the way to worship me, Krishna. And he's not answering specifically yet, but he's getting there. He says, those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. So he's giving 3 important points, and that's the start. And we've been covering these the last couple of days. First, now, if this talk so far has been boring, these 3 points are wanting to be bored in. Bored in. So I stop for a second and do a reset and say, okay, now pay attention to these. If you didn't pay attention to anything else, pay attention to these. First, fixing their thought on me. Fixing their thought on me. This mind has to be brought to a single point, and if one wants freedom, that means that the single point needs to be the divine, the eternal, the eternal. Otherwise, the mind continually gets fixed on the temporal changing, right? Yeah. And there's just suffering from that. We have some other idea, but that's it. So, and what do we want? We want the supreme happiness all of the time. We don't want a little bit of love now and then. We want to be loved completely whatever we do, you see. And so that demands a relationship with the eternal and the absolute. No limited relationship will do. So the first and most important is to recognize I have to relate to the highest. I can't continue to relate to the interim stuff. I can't relate to all of the lieutenants. I have to go to the general. Right? The king's servants won't do me any good. I need to be with the king. So think only of me. So find a way to get me in the center of every one of your thoughts. And since I am everywhere, it's not as hard as you think. We just finished the Yoga of the Cosmic Vision. Since I am everywhere in everything, it's not as hard as you think. You can find me in a leaf. You can find me in an atom. You can find me in a note of music. You can find me in a desire. You can find me in a cookie. You can find me in a temple. You can find me in a garbage can. You can find me in a person that's praising you. You can find me in a person that's screaming at you. So it's not that hard. It's not as hard as we imagine it to be. So find me and think of me only.
Someone that comes to mind when you were talking about this the other day was Francis of Assisi.
Yeah.
Because he was so in love with Jesus, and that was, when you read his writings, he was just, you see that every sentence almost. And
yeah, only ever thinking of Jesus.
So devotional.
So only ever thinking of Jesus. You know, Francis went through the ringer, thank God, for him. I mean, he would say, oh, I'm so happy because he had this terrible 3-year depression and all of this. Because why? Vairagya. Extreme vairagya, disinterest in the things of the world. He was so enamored with the things of the world, but he hit that point, this won't do. And so he went into this very deep depression, and what came there was something like this, which is the hearing, the beginning to relate to the highest. And for him, for Arjuna, it's Krishna. For him, Jesus. What's the difference? In this discussion, Krishna says there's no difference. Right? Me, the highest. The highest. And I give you myself everywhere. So first is think only of me. Second, ever self-controlled, worship me. Ever self-controlled. So don't let that mind run off to all of these sense objects. Don't let it continue to go after all of this temporal stuff that you really must come to know won't bring you anything but pain and sorrow. As long as we remain attached to the sense objects, then so control that mind and worship me. What does that mean? Live with me at the center of your life. Not your pleasure at the center of your life. Not avoidance of your pain at the center of your life. Not your desire at the center of your life. Not your imaginary I at the center of your life. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, when what Gopala is doing with this on the Heart Sutra, this concept of emptiness. Thich Nhat Hanh says that emptiness is a relative term. It's not an absolute term. It doesn't have, emptiness never has absolute meaning. Emptiness has relative meaning. So here is a cup with tea in it. And it has a little bit of tea.
There's a lot of tea.
And now the cup is empty. Is it empty of air?
No.
But it's empty. It's empty of what?
Tea.
It's only a relative term. That's how it gets misunderstood, this emptiness, this concept of emptiness in the Buddhist tradition. So what are we full of in these cups? What are we full of in this cup?
Desires.
Full of me, little me, I, me, mine. You need to treat me right or I will leave you. What am I going to get from this? Well, that is an empty cup.
It's always full.
It is an empty cup. Empty. Right. When you look at the skandhas, when you look at the form, at the energy, when you look at all of this, what do you find? It's empty of that I. That little I doesn't exist. That's the emptiness.
Oh.
And so, worship me. Worship me. Don't worship yourself. Don't worship your ideas. Don't worship your body. Don't worship the things that, why, my dear? Why, my dear children? Why? Because I love you so much. And I just want for you to be happy. And you have to come to see that as long as you worship something limited, there's only pain and sadness for you, my dear. And so worship me. I am the Absolute. I am your father, mother. I am your all in all. So worship me. Put me at the center of your life and become me. Because you and I are one. Because you and I are the same. And I want you to have the kingdom. So worship me. Like this. It's not a command in the sense of a command. And he even gives it as an opinion. He says, this is the best way. This is my opinion. This is the best way. Because when you think only of me, when you're able to see me everywhere and think only of me and put me at the center of your thoughts, and then live your life with me at the center, with the eternal, with the absolute love, with the boundless life, with the life that passes through and bubbles through everything here. And then with supreme faith, meaning, well, I don't have the supreme faith yet, but Swami Chinmayananda gave us this beautiful definition of a way to deal with this concept of faith. He said, Shraddha is, and then he quotes, my belief in something I do not know so that I may come to know what I believe in. So Shraddha, he gives us a concept that we can work with, which is we believe in something, and now if we want to know it, we live as if it's true. And in that way, Shraddha results in supreme faith, absolute faith. Does that resonate? It's a beautiful approach. And blind faith doesn't do. Blind faith doesn't do because it gets tested. And the limited beliefs that we have, they all get tested and they all get thrown in the dumpster. And so it comes to a place of knowing. Okay. We'll move on. And we'll just introduce the next two shlokas. So we've taken 3 days on this one shloka, we notice, and we'll move on. But in other places in the Gita, he says the same thing. There's the one shloka that's repeated almost exactly twice, which is, think only of me, devote yourself completely to me, and offer everything to me, offer the fruit, offer everything to me, and you shall surely have me. And then this last line is added in the 18th chapter. That same is said in the 9th, and again 18th, and then closing the yoga of the cosmic vision, he says very similar to that, and now it's an exploration of it and a deep dive into it. And in the 18th, this last line is added, and you shall surely have me. So this is yoga. This is the essence of yoga. Yoga is not about anything other than this. All of the practices of yoga are about preparation for this. Purification, getting us to the place where we're willing to go in deep. Okay, now I'll dive in. And the way that we dive in is devotion. And it's okay if we have a little devotion. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And then go for it. Then go for it. But as much as we can muster, as much, and here devotion is defined. Do we get the definition? Think of me. Whatever is the object of devotion. And this is the same. I observed it. I've shared, I was devoted to money. I was devoted to so much different stuff, right? Money and having an independent life, interestingly, that had to have been at the top of the list. Because when I was walking pilgrimage and had to let go of everything, that was the hardest to let go of. And of course, when I let go of that independence, then only then was I completely holding on only to the infinite. And such a relief, but so hard. But what he's sharing in terms of principle, it is devotion. It's the same. So when I was devoted to money, what does that mean? I thought only of money. Right? I would do something and then I would think about, when am I going to get paid for it? Yeah. When am I going to get the reward for it? So I would think about it all of the time. And I would think about what to do in order to get what I wanted. Right? So that's one of the marks of devotion. And then, steadfast mind. Yeah. People, the ones who are the most successful, quote unquote, in the world are the ones whose minds are the most steadfast. So you look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a thing in this age, right? When people talk with him, what does he talk about? Only the things that interest him, and he has a few things. Getting us to Mars, energy independence, robotics. Yeah. So, and what happens is whatever he's engaged in, he ends up being successful about it. What is it? Is he like some magic being or something like that?
He's focused.
He's focused. He's focused. That's what I used to be called a visionary. What does that mean? Because I could control the mind and see the goal and I wouldn't forget it. So focused mind, steadfast, self-control. And then faith, steadfast faith, firm faith. I was completely convinced that money would provide happiness if there was enough of it. I had faith in it. So that's devotion. That is devotion. When you ask what is devotion, that's it. What do you live for? What do you think about? What are you willing to control yourself for? The one who has a beau, who has someone that they wish to be with, they will act a certain way in order to win them over. You ever notice that, dear? You see it in yourself, you see it in others as well, right? So what does that mean? That means you have to control yourself. You don't say the things you would normally say because you recognize that if you say it, you might not get what you want. So is that self-control? Yeah. So control yourself. Don't think the things that are detrimental. Don't say them. So this is devotion. It's really a beautiful definition of devotion. Think one last time and then we move on. Fixing their mind on me, worship me, so put me at the center, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, These, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. Okay. So now he begins to, and really he's answered the question. He said, form or not form, I'll tell you what's important. And now, 3 and 4. Those who worship the imperishable, the indefinable, the unmanifest, the omnipresent, the immovable, and the eternal, having restrained all of the senses, even-minded everywhere, rejoicing ever in the welfare of all beings, verily they also come unto me. So we'll come back to those tomorrow morning for a little bit. But he's answering the question about which is better. Which is better. So
Either or, huh? No matter what, it's either
he's saying either or, but then he'll give a proviso next. He'll give a recommendation next. So he says either or. The important thing is those 3 points, right? Bring the mind to it. Worship. So put it at the center of the life and have faith in what you're engaged in. And again, it works. If you don't have faith in what you're engaged in, then success won't be there. And because of who you are, when you have faith in the Absolute, you become the Absolute. Why? How would that be?
There's no separation.
Do you notice that when you have absolute faith in something, unshakable faith in something, that you're able to achieve it? And so even here, he talks about having faith. What does that mean? Seeing it, visualizing it, living it. So we can believe something, but if we don't believe it very strongly, it's very hard to live it. But here, living it. Because of who you are, then you'll attain to it. Meaning, you are the Absolute already. You are that. Tattvamasi, thou art that. So, by stilling the mind, by putting the Absolute at the center of the life, and by stepping into the faith, whatever faith you have, and continuing to do so, then you find yourself as spirit. Then you find yourself as spirit, not as body, not as a limited being. But as long as we live as if we are the limited being, then we won't know ourselves as spirit. Oh, okay. Any questions or comments this morning on the discussion?
Paul wrote a bit about faith as well to his congregations. I'll try to find that and put it on WhatsApp. It's a
Okay, cool.
beautiful
Oh.
message.
Oh. Of course, it'll get, the whole faith thing, it'll get so easily misunderstood because, in the religious communities, you'll get someone who's telling someone else, just have faith, but it can't work that way. It gets perfected, but it gets perfected only through the process of trying it, putting it into practice. And Nididhyasana. There's a 3-step formula to learning the highest truth according to Vedanta, the teaching of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, or Vedanta, just the school of Vedanta. It's said to be first Shravana. Shravana is listening. And then Manana, which is contemplating, rolling it around in the mind. And then Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is living as if it were true. And that's really the process of learning anything, even if it's a trade. So you want to learn how to play drums. Beautiful. First, listen to someone play who's accomplished playing the drum. Ask them questions. Listen to what they say, right? And then roll it around in the mind, yeah, in a way, even with that. And then you practice it, right? The challenging part when we're dealing with something which is extrasensory, beyond the senses, then fears and all of this, of course, will arise about actually living as if I'm not the body, right? Anger will arise at a person, and your own intuitive self will tell you to let it go. And then, okay.
I was
Yes,
imagining the counterpart of this is that people are existing in the mind and body. They want to please their mind and body. So I can imagine how much more trash there would be on the earth because everybody's ordering from Amazon still. Everybody's doing all this stuff. We're accumulating, especially Amazon. There's so much recycling litter. It would just surmount to that much more.
Okay, we'll close. Page 174 is the final prayers in Arati. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukamiva Bandhanam Ritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukamiva Bandhanam Ritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukamiva Bandhanam Ritor Mukshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makashi Dukhabha Bhave Masato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Sakura Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions. Let's rise for Arati. Hey, Jai.